You ever grow up believing one version of the truth only to have it completely shattered in your late 20s? When I, 29M, was 6, my dad abandoned me and my mom. That's how she always told the story. She cried, told everyone he cheated, ran off with some younger woman, and left us with nothing. I spent my entire childhood hating the man. Every birthday, every school event, every Christmas, he was never there. And my mom made sure to remind me who was to blame. She never dated again. Said he ruined love for her. I felt like it was my job to protect her. I worked hard in school, stayed out of trouble, and got a scholarship. I became a software engineer, making decent money now. We weren't rich, but I made sure Mom never lacked anything. I paid off her debts, helped her get a newer car, and even covered her rent when she lost her job last year. A few weeks ago, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone with my last name. Thought it was a scam at first, but I clicked. It was a woman around my age. She said she thought we might be siblings. Plot twist? She was right. Turns out, my dad didn't leave us because he was a cheater. He left because my mom gave him an ultimatum. Choose me or his then 5-month-old daughter from another woman. A woman he was seeing before he and my mom ever became official. He and my mom were on and off and not exclusive at the time. When she got pregnant with me, she demanded he cut ties with the other woman and the baby. He refused, so she kicked him out, told everyone he left her, told me he abandoned us. She blocked him from every direction. She even changed our numbers and moved across the state. She made sure I never got his letters. Yeah, he wrote to me. For years. His daughter, my half-sister, only reached out because he passed away earlier this year from a heart condition. She said he always wanted to reconnect, but he respected my mom's boundaries. His dying wish was for me to know the truth. He left me a letter. I cried reading it. I don't cry, but damn, I did. I confronted my mom. She didn't even deny it. She just said, "I did what was best for you." No apology. No remorse. Just cold. I was shaking. I told her I needed space. Then, like some cosmic joke, 3 days later she called me crying. She was facing eviction. She needed $1,500 fast or she'd be out on the street. I hung up. Now the whole family is blowing up my phone, calling me heartless, selfish, ungrateful, saying things like, "She raised you," and "She was a single mom." My aunt even said, "So you're punishing her for something she did 20+ years ago?" But all I can think is, she didn't raise me alone. She pushed the other parent away. She let me believe I was abandoned. She poisoned my memories. So, AITA for refusing to help my mom financially now that I know the truth? After the initial fallout, I stayed silent for a week. Didn't reply to texts, ignored calls, even muted the family group chat. I didn't block anyone. Just watched from the sidelines as the comments poured in. Some of the things people said were brutal. "You're letting money come before blood? Your mom sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay her? He's dead now. Let it go." But no one wanted to talk about why she needed help, or how she lied for 23 years, or how she kept me from a whole half of my life. Then my aunt, Mom's sister, came by my apartment uninvited. I wasn't going to open the door, but she kept banging until I did. The first thing she said was, "You're her son, not her judge." She sat down like she owned the place and started giving me this speech about forgiveness, about how people make mistakes when they're young, about how single motherhood is hard, about how my mom had to choose what was best. I asked her one question, "Did you know?" She hesitated, looked at the floor, and then admitted, "Yes, but I didn't know the full story." T. She knew enough to know that my dad didn't abandon me. She let me believe that lie too. All of them did. Apparently, the reason my mom's facing eviction is because she borrowed money from a shady loan guy to try and open an online business. She blew through everything I gave her last year. No savings, no planning, nothing. She expected I'd bail her out again. My aunt begged me to at least meet with my mom. I agreed, not because I wanted to help her, but because I needed closure. I needed to hear it from her mouth. Needed to see if there was any guilt at all. We met at a quiet diner. She looked tired. Makeup couldn't hide the stress on her face. The first thing she said, "I knew you'd come. You're a good son." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I lied to you." Not, "You didn't deserve any of this." Just manipulation. I asked her if she ever considered what her lie did to me. The trauma, the identity crisis, the guilt I carried for years, the therapy I never got, the father I could have known. She said, "I didn't think he deserved to be in your life." I asked, "And what about what I deserved?" Silence. That silence was my answer. I slid a copy of the letter my dad wrote across the table. She didn't touch it, just stared at it like it was poison. Then she whispered, "He was trying to turn you against me." That's when I realized something terrifying. She still believed she was the victim. I left, didn't pay her rent, didn't offer to help. I'm done. But now even my cousins are turning on me, saying things like, "She's your mother, man. You only get one. She's struggling. You have the money. Don't let one mistake ruin your whole relationship." One mistake. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, a decades-long lie. And now I'm being told I'm the bad guy because I won't bankroll the person who orchestrated that lie? Still, sometimes late at night I wonder, what if they're right? What if I am punishing her too harshly? After that diner conversation, I went home, sat in the dark, and reread my dad's letter. His handwriting was kind of messy, slanted like he was rushing, maybe emotional, maybe sick already, but every word felt sincere. He wrote about how he met my mom in college, how they were casual at first, how things escalated too fast, and how she got pregnant with me just a few months before his other ex had my half-sister, Marissa. He wrote, "I wanted to be there for both of you, but she told me it had to be one or the other. She said I wasn't allowed to split my time or my love. She said if I chose Marissa, I'd never see you again." I didn't believe her. I thought she was bluffing. He continued, "The day I tried to show up to your daycare, just to see you, she called the cops and told them I was a danger to you. She filed a restraining order. I lost my rights before you could even form memories of me." That sentence gutted me. She called the cops, and I grew up thinking he walked away. I texted Marissa. I needed to know if this was real. She said, "It's worse than you think." We met at a park the next day. She brought a photo album. There were pictures of my dad at her school recitals, her graduation, her birthdays. He was always there, smiling, present, kind-looking. And then, she showed me a picture of me. Picture of me as a toddler in his arms. I froze. Apparently, before the restraining order, he was allowed to see me a few times. She said he talked about those visits for decades, that he always kept that photo in his wallet. He loved me. He wanted me. He just wasn't allowed to fight for me anymore. Because my mom made him look like a monster to everyone, even the courts. Then came the kicker. He tried to reestablish contact with me when I was 16. He sent a letter to my high school. It never got to me. Wanna guess why? Because the school called home to confirm and my mom told them to discard it. She's been actively erasing him from my life every time he tried to reach out. I thought I was done crying about this. But that day, I wept like a kid, right there on the park bench. Then Marissa said, "There's more. I have something you need to see." She handed me a small wooden box. Said Dad left it for me in his will. Inside were more letters dated every year on my birthday, all unopened. All returned to sender. She had kept them safe. Some were hopeful, some sad, some angry, but all of them ended the same way. "I love you. I'm still your dad. And I'll always be here, no matter what your mother says." It was in that moment that I realized I didn't lose my dad. I was stolen from him. And yet the same woman who did all this is now asking me to forgive and forget because she needs rent money? It's like I'm living in some emotional hostage situation. I haven't spoken to my mom since the diner, but word travels fast. She somehow found out I met with Marissa. And guess what? She texted me a 10-paragraph rant accusing me of betraying her. No apology, no accountability, just You're taking the side of the man who left us for another woman. She was always jealous of me and wanted to steal my son too. You're punishing me for protecting you. I gave you my whole life and you're throwing it away for strangers." I didn't reply, but for the first time in my life, I started to wonder if she's not just manipulative, but unwell. The next morning, I scheduled a therapy session. It wasn't even a question anymore. I felt like my whole life had been shattered and rebuilt on lies, and now I was walking on the pieces. My thoughts were scrambled. One moment I was furious. The next I felt guilty, then numb, then everything all at once. I told the therapist, let's call her Dr. M, the whole story. Every brutal detail. She didn't say much at first, just listened. But then she leaned forward and asked, "When you say your mother protected you, what exactly do you think she was protecting you from?" That question hit harder than I expected. Because the truth was, she wasn't protecting me. She was protecting herself. Her image. Her story. Her version of the past. It wasn't about me. It never was. After the session, I went for a walk. I didn't even realize where I was going until I looked up and saw it. The law office listed on my dad's will. The same one Marissa mentioned. I went inside, gave them my ID, and said I believed I was named in my father's estate. The receptionist gave me a weird look but came back with a sealed envelope. I opened it on the spot. There was a letter, a check, and a document. The letter said, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to see you in time. I never stopped loving you. I know your mother made it hard to find me, but I hope one day you'll know the truth and make your own choice." Then came the shocker. He left me $85,000. Not because he was rich. He wasn't. But he'd saved slowly over the years. Bit by bit. He'd planned to use it to take me on a trip one day. Or help me with college. Or maybe help me buy a first home. But since none of that happened, he left it to me now. No strings attached. No conditions. Just, do something good with it. Something you choose. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because of the money, but because it was proof. Proof that he never forgot me. That same night, I got a text from my mom. "He never gave you anything while he was alive. Of course now he tries to buy your love. You think that changes what he did?" She had found out. No idea how. Maybe someone in the family told her. Maybe Marissa's aunt talked. But she knew. And she wasn't happy for me. She wasn't curious about what he left me. She was jealous. It confirmed what Dr. M said. My mom doesn't see me as a person. She sees me as a possession. A mirror that should only reflect the story she tells. And now that I was finally seeing something different, she was cracking. That night, I made a choice. I transferred $10,000 from the inheritance to a new account. And I told Marissa, "Let's go visit the place where he's buried. Together." She cried. We planned the trip. Just the two of us. A small road trip, a few hours away. We'd stop at a few places Dad used to love. Places from her childhood, which could have been my childhood too. And before we left, I posted one picture on Instagram. Just one. It was a photo of the wooden box, with his handwriting on top. Caption: "The truth doesn't always come from who raised you. Sometimes it comes from who tried to." My DMs exploded. Family, friends, even old teachers. Some were supportive. Some were angry. My mom? She went ballistic. She called. Left voicemails sobbing, screaming, bargaining. She said, "You're destroying me. This is abuse. I can't believe you'd turn on me like this. I gave you everything. You're going to regret this one day." And maybe she's right. Maybe I will regret how messy this is getting. But you know what? I regret not asking questions sooner a hell of a lot more. The drive to Dad's grave was quiet at first. Marissa and I had only met a couple of times in person before this trip, but it didn't feel awkward. Felt right, like we were catching up on a bond that was stolen from us before it ever had the chance to form. She told me stories I'd never heard. How Dad made the worst pancakes ever but insisted on making them every Saturday. How he once drove 4 hours to get her a limited edition comic she wanted. How he took her camping every summer, even when he got sick. And then she said something that really stayed with me. He never talked badly about your mom. Ever. Not once. Even when he had every reason to. That hit me, because all my life, I'd only heard one version of the story, hers. But he'd stayed silent. Not because he was weak, but because he didn't want me to hate her. We pulled into the cemetery just after 3 p.m. It was quiet, peaceful. August sun filtering through the trees. She led me to the spot. His headstone was simple. James A. Collins, loving father, honest soul. 1966 to 2025. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there, staring at the name, the dates, the man I was told left me, and who never actually did. Then Marissa pulled out a letter from her bag. He wrote this before he passed. For you. I promised him I'd give it to you at his grave. My hands were shaking when I opened it. My boy, I don't know what version of me you were told about. I hope one day you'll let yourself believe something better. You were never forgotten. I tried. I swear to God I tried. I never hated your mother. I just couldn't live in a lie. But I never stopped loving you. If you're reading this, then I still do. I broke. Dropped to my knees in the grass, holding that letter like it was oxygen. And for the first time in my life I felt it. Grief. Not just for a father I never had, but for a whole life I'd been robbed of. We sat there for over an hour. Then Marissa's phone rang. She looked confused. She stepped aside, answered, and came back with her face pale. She found out, she whispered. Your mom. Somehow, and we still don't know how, my mother had called the cemetery. Told them someone was posing as family to gain access to a private grave. Said she was the next of kin and we were liars. They checked the plot records. Marissa was listed. She'd handled the funeral. But apparently my mother demanded they call the police to confirm. We left before anyone showed up. Not because we did anything wrong, but because I wasn't going to let her ruin this too. On the drive back, we were both silent again. Not because we were uncomfortable, but because there were no words for what she just tried to do. This wasn't just about her being controlling anymore. This was sabotage. Pure, ugly sabotage. Later that night, I got an email. Yes, an email. She wrote, "How dare you stand at that man's grave and pretend he loved you? He abandoned us." I don't care what letters he wrote. He was weak. He was a coward. You don't know what he put me through. That was the last straw. I didn't respond. I blocked her. Phone, email, socials, everything. Because I realized something awful. She didn't want to protect me from pain. She wanted to protect herself from losing control of the narrative. Even now, after all the proof, all the letters, all the truth, she refuses to let go of her version of the past. And in doing so, she lost her son. Going no contact was peaceful at first. No voicemails. No manipulative texts. No guilt-laced "I raised you" messages at 2 a.m. Just silence. And in that silence, I started sleeping better. I went to work and actually focused. I even smiled at a stupid meme without that heavy ache in my chest. I was starting to reclaim pieces of myself. But, of course, it didn't last. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was my cousin. The one I used to call Uncle Nate growing up, even though he was only 10 years older than me. He said, "Hey, I know you're pissed at the family, rightfully, but there's something you need to know. It's about your mom, about your dad, and someone else." He left his number. I called back. We met the next day at a gas station outside of town. Neutral ground. Nate looked tired, like someone who'd been carrying a secret too long. He asked if I knew about Diane. I didn't. He sighed. "Diane was your mom's sister, my mom's older cousin. She died before you were born. At least that's what we were always told." Then he pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping. Missing persons notice. Dated 1984. Name, Diane Collins. Last seen, with her younger sister, Melanie Collins. My mom. I stared at the name, at the date. at the black and white photo of a 20-something woman who looked vaguely familiar, like someone I might have passed on the street and done a double take. He said, "The story we were told growing up was that Diane ran off, got mixed up in drugs. Your mom said she was a bad influence, but something never sat right. She just disappeared. No body, no letter, nothing." Then came the bombshell. A few years ago, a woman claiming to be Diane was spotted at a shelter 3 towns over. She was sick, paranoid. She kept repeating the same thing. "She took everything from me. She erased me. My mother." Apparently, the woman died before anyone could confirm her identity. No ID, no DNA, but the shelter worker remembered her face. And they took a photo. Nate showed it to me. It was her. Older. Gone. But undeniably Diane. He said, "I think your mom did to her what she did to your dad. Maybe worse." It was like a switch flipped in my head. Suddenly, every manipulation, every lie, every calculated guilt trip I'd ever experienced made a sick kind of sense. My mother didn't just control narratives. She deleted people. I went home and dug through some old photo albums I'd taken from her attic years ago. And sure enough, in a few childhood photos of her and her siblings, there was another girl, slightly older, smiling. But in the albums she gave me growing up, Diane was cut out, literally, cropped or sliced, like she was never there. I texted Marissa that night, told her everything. She didn't seem surprised. Your mom's whole world is built on control. Truth doesn't matter to her, only perception. And then she asked, "Are you going to tell people?" That's when I froze. Because if I tell this story, all of it, I destroy whatever reputation my mom still has in the family. I open wounds that were never allowed to heal. I reveal secrets some people might never be ready to hear. But if I don't, I'm letting her win again, letting her rewrite history again. So now I'm torn. Do I burn down the whole truth and watch the fallout? Or do I quietly walk away and protect people who never protected me? That's why I'm here, on Reddit, writing all this. Because maybe you can tell me, AITA, if I finally expose the truth, not just about me and my dad, but about my mom's entire legacy. After Nate showed me the photo of Diane, I couldn't sleep. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept staring at that image of a woman who had been erased from every story I was ever told. I knew what I had to do. I started writing a long post. Not on Reddit, not yet, but on Facebook. My audience, family, extended relatives, the ones who believed my mom's version of events for decades. I laid it all out, carefully, calmly, no insults, just facts, dates, scans of the letters from my dad, the photo of Diane, the inheritance letter, the missing persons clipping, everything. Before I hit post, I sent it to Marissa and Nate. They both gave me the same response. "If you don't tell the truth now, she'll rewrite it forever." So I hit post. Within an hour, my phone blew up. Texts, DMs, missed calls. Some from people I hadn't spoken to since high school. Others from my mom's side of the family demanding I take it down. That I was slandering a woman who gave up everything for me. Then came the email. From a lawyer. Not my mom's lawyer. My dad's. Apparently, my mom had somehow found out about the $85,000 inheritance and was trying to contest it. Said it was inappropriate, emotionally manipulative, and that my dad left it under false pretenses. She claimed I had been groomed by his other daughter into hating my mother, and that the money should be placed in a neutral account until the situation was resolved. Can you believe that? She was trying to freeze the money, the one thing my dad was able to give me. I called the lawyer directly. He was calm but clearly pissed. "She has no legal standing," he said. "The will was finalized. Not only that, but your father took precautions. There's another account." I blinked. "What?" He explained. There was a second account in my name with another $15,000. Not mentioned in the will. Set up years ago. Apparently, my dad had started saving for me long before he was diagnosed. The money had been sitting there untouched. Why? Because he didn't trust that my mom wouldn't somehow find a way to take it. He literally told the bank to wait until my son comes looking. And now, she was doing exactly what he predicted. I forwarded all the emails, letters, and screenshots to the lawyer. Within 24 hours, the request to freeze the inheritance was denied. And my mom? She sent me a single-sentence text. "You're no longer my son." I stared at the screen for a long time. I expected pain, regret, maybe even anger. But what I felt was relief, because I realized something dark but liberating. I was never really her son, not in the way that mattered. I was her project, her shield, her proof of martyrdom. She didn't raise me to be loved. She raised me to be indebted. Now that I was breaking that script, she had no use for me. I turned off my phone, sat on the porch with a drink, and watched the sun go down. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt something I never associated with family before: freedom. A week after the inheritance mess was settled, I got an unexpected invitation in the mail. It was from my mother's side of the family. They were holding a reunion, a family celebration to mark my mother's 60th birthday. Everyone was invited. I wasn't sure whether it was meant to include me, but the words "come back to the fold" stood out. I had blocked my mother's number, so I didn't know how they got my address. Probably through one of my aunts or cousins who didn't care about the truth and just wanted to pretend everything was normal again. At first, I thought about ignoring it. Let them pretend I didn't exist. But then something shifted inside me. What if this was my chance to confront everything? What if this was my opportunity to finally expose it all to the people who'd been blind to the truth for years? I texted Marissa, "I'm going. Are you sure?" "I have to." The next weekend, I packed my bag and drove to the venue. It was an upscale banquet hall, far enough away that it felt like a formal affair. The kind of place my mom would have always dreamed of. I walked in alone. No one knew I was coming, but when I walked through the door, every eye turned toward me. For a second, everything felt like one of those movie moments where time slows down, and you realize that you're about to break the world in half. There were people I hadn't seen in years. Faces that were familiar but blurred with time. A few cousins, uncles, aunts, and then I saw her, my mother. She looked different, not just older but smaller somehow, like she'd been living in a shadow for too long and finally came out into the light, only to realize it wasn't as forgiving as she thought. Her face went pale when she saw me. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I walked straight to the middle of the room and waited. Everyone stared at me like I was some kind of intruder. Finally, one of my uncles stepped forward. "So, you decided to show up after all." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The letter, the truth, they were all right in front of them. Every single person here had already been exposed to it in one way or another. I took a breath and said, "I've come to give you all a chance to see the truth. You can keep pretending or you can face it." "What truth?" my mother hissed. "The truth about Diane. The truth about what really happened with my dad. About the lies. About you." I held up a copy of the family photo, the one where Diane was cut out. It was slightly crumpled, but the truth was still clear. "You erased her. You erased him. And now you're trying to erase me." The room went completely still. People shifted uneasily. Whispers began, like ripples in water. My mother's eyes flicked between my face and the photo. She looked like she might fall apart. But then, she did the one thing I never expected. She laughed. Not a chuckle. Not a sob. Just a harsh, cold, mocking laugh. "You think any of this matters now? You think you've won? You think you've destroyed me? I built this family. I controlled this story. And now you want to tear it down?" "No," I said, stepping closer. "I'm just showing you what was always there, what you've been hiding." Aunt Rachel, who was always the mediator, stepped forward. She looked at my mom, then at me. "You need to stop, both of you. This isn't the time. Not here." "No," I said, voice shaking with something I couldn't contain. "The time is now. It's always been now." For the first time in my life, I saw my mother lose control. Her mask cracked. She looked scared, vulnerable, almost like a stranger. That's when the first relative spoke up. My cousin Sarah. I had no idea about Diane, about any of this, but it makes sense now. The way things were always too perfect. Then another cousin, Jack, added. I remember hearing things, but I never questioned them. Maybe because we were afraid to. The floodgates started to open, and suddenly, the silence was filled with people asking questions. People demanding answers. It wasn't just my mom on trial anymore. It was her entire version of history, and no one was buying it. I turned to her one last time and said, "You lost me the day you tried to steal the inheritance. You lost me when you tried to keep me from knowing the truth. And now you've lost everyone who ever believed you." She didn't say a word. After the reunion, I didn't stick around to hear the rest of the arguments. I didn't need to. What mattered was that, for the first time in my life, the truth had been put in front of everyone who'd been fooled for decades. For the first time, people saw my mother not as a saint, but as a liar, a manipulator, a person who had controlled a narrative for years, and now it was unraveling. But when I left the hall, I saw something I didn't expect. My mom was waiting by the exit. She looked exhausted but not broken. Not yet. I stopped walking. She turned to me. "You think this changes anything?" Her voice was hoarse, tired. "You think now that everyone knows everything, they'll side with you? You'll never win. You never will." "It's not about winning anymore," I said. "It's about living with the truth. And you don't get to erase people anymore." She stared at me. For the first time, I saw something human, something raw in her eyes. But then, in an instant, her face hardened again. "You really think you've won? You're destroying me. This is your fault. You could have just stayed quiet." "You made me quiet for years," I said, my voice shaking now. "You made me believe lies. You took my dad away from me. And you took away the possibility of me knowing the truth for my whole life." She sneered. "You're just like him, aren't you? A traitor. You're going to leave me with nothing. You've ruined everything. You think they'll still love you when they know you destroyed me? No, you destroyed yourself. And I'm not your scapegoat anymore." She lunged toward me, but I stepped back. She looked at me with a desperate, crazed look. And for a second, I wondered if she was capable of more than just emotional manipulation. "Don't you dare walk away from me again," she spat. "You're my son. You owe me. You owe me everything." But I didn't stay. I turned my back and left. I didn't need to see her anymore. I didn't need her to justify anything to me. I went back to my car, heart pounding. My hands were still trembling. I felt like I'd just stepped out of a storm. But there was something freeing about it. Something I hadn't realized I needed until now. The ride home was a blur. My phone rang constantly, but I didn't answer. Texts came in too, relatives, friends, a few of my cousins. They wanted to talk, ask questions, tell me how they felt about the reunion. But all I could think about was one thing. I'd finally broken free. Finally freed myself from the emotional prison she'd built around me. And yes, it felt terrible in the moment, but the relief outweighed the pain. I deleted all the texts, blocked anyone who tried to reach me. I had no more energy for those conversations. I had no more energy to fix her, or fix the way everyone saw her. And the truth? It didn't matter how anyone else saw it. It mattered that I finally knew. A few days later, I got an email from my mom. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. That I was the villain. That I was the one who betrayed her. That I was the one who caused the destruction. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had already been through that with her for years. I'd already been through her manipulation, her attempts to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. Now I was standing for me. It's strange, how some things can go on so long without you realizing they're there. You get so used to a certain version of the world, to people lying to you, that when the truth finally hits you, it feels almost unreal. It had been 2 weeks since the reunion. The aftermath was a mix of silence and strange apologies from some relatives who were just now starting to understand the situation. But it wasn't easy. I was still processing everything. That's when I got an unexpected call. It was from the lawyer who had helped me with the inheritance. "We need to talk," he said. "There's something about your father's past that I think you need to know. It's urgent." I don't know why, but I agreed to meet with him. When I walked into his office, he handed me a thick file, a legal document, a letter, and a faded photograph. "This was your father's final request," he said. "It was part of the will, but I couldn't bring myself to tell you until now." The photo was of my father, much younger, maybe in his late 20s. He was standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. She was holding a child. The child looked about 5 or 6. For a moment I froze. The woman in the photo had the same dark eyes as me, the same smile, and the child was me. The lawyer leaned in. "There's something I need you to understand about your father's past. The truth is, your dad wasn't as much of a saint as you think. He was running from something, from someone, and that woman in the photo, that was your biological mother." I blinked, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He handed me a letter. "I wasn't able to tell you sooner, but this was part of your father's final confession. Before he died, he wanted you to know the truth about everything, about your mom, about your real family." It turned out my dad hadn't abandoned me after all. He hadn't chosen to leave. He had been forced to. Before meeting my mom, my father had been married to someone else. They had a child, me, but my biological mother was not the same woman I had been raised to believe was my mom. The woman I grew up with wasn't my real mother at all. I learned that the woman who raised me had adopted me after my biological mother died in a car accident when I was just a baby. My dad, in his grief, never spoke of her again. He'd never told me that I wasn't his biological child. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't want to hurt me. In his letter, my father wrote, "I didn't want you to grow up with that knowledge. I didn't want you to feel different. You were always my son, no matter what, but I had to let you go, and that decision still hurts, but I hope in time you'll understand." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. My whole life, the one I had built in my mind, was a lie. I wasn't who I thought I was. The pieces of my identity shattered into 1,000 fragments. And in the midst of it, I found myself questioning everything. My father, my mother, my family, were any of these people who they said they were? The lawyer handed me one more thing. "I also have a letter from your biological mother's family. They want to meet you." Seemed like a joke, a cruel twist of fate. I was being handed more pieces of a story I didn't even know existed. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep running from the truth anymore. I thought back to everything that had happened, the fight with my mom, the reunion, the inheritance. All of it felt meaningless now, because everything had changed again. And now I was at a crossroads. I had a choice. I could ignore this new truth, pretend it didn't exist and continue on with the life I knew. Or I could confront it. Accept the fact that my life, my identity, everything about me had been built on secrets. The days after I found out about my biological mother were a whirlwind. I couldn't stop thinking about everything, about how my father had kept this secret from me for so long, about the woman who had raised me, and about what this all meant for my identity. I thought I could just leave it all behind, walk away from it and keep my life as it was. But something in me knew that I couldn't. So I called the lawyer back. "I'm going to meet them." He didn't ask any questions. Just said he'd make the arrangements. The meeting was set for the following weekend. I spent the next few days thinking about the moment. The first time I'd meet my biological family. The people who shared my blood. Who had been out there all this time. And yet, I had no idea they even existed. When I arrived at the address, a quaint, older house, I felt an odd mix of nervousness and anticipation. As I stood in front of the door, I realized just how much I had to lose, or maybe what I had to gain. The door opened, and standing in front of me was a woman who looked just like me. She had the same dark eyes, the same smile, but the most unsettling thing was how familiar she felt. Not in the way you feel when you meet someone close to you, but in the way a mirror sometimes feels like an unfamiliar stranger. She spoke first. "You must be Kyle. I mean, your aunt." I barely spoke. I just nodded, still processing. Behind and stood another woman, slightly older. She smiled and said softly, "I'm Patricia, your grandmother. We've been waiting to meet you." There was an odd tension in the air, a heaviness. I tried to mask the confusion, but it was impossible. They invited me in. The house smelled like old books and lavender. Felt like a place I could have grown up in, if things had been different. A place where memories weren't stained by secrets and lies. I sat down with them, and began to explain what I needed to know. Your mother, she was a beautiful person, but she made some choices. Choices that led her away from us. And we had to let her go. What happened? I asked, my voice cracking, and hesitated for a moment, then said, "She fell in love with your father when she was young, and she was pregnant with you, but she had problems. She had a lot of demons, and she wasn't able to stay with us or be the person we wanted her to be. She died too young." I'm sorry. That hit me harder than I expected. I never knew anything about her. No one ever spoke of her except in the vaguest terms. She had died before I could even form memories of her. Patricia, my grandmother, spoke up next. "Your father did the best he could to raise you. I think he loved you more than anything. But he wasn't equipped for the grief. We tried to reach out, but he couldn't handle the weight of it all. He shut us out." I nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of their words. "So what does this all mean now?" I asked. "Why are you telling me this?" And looked at me, her eyes full of emotion. "Because we've always wanted you to know who you really are. Not just as your father's son, but as part of this family. You deserve to know the truth, and we want you to be part of it." For the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: belonging. These people shared my blood. They had a history that I had never known, a connection that I had never been able to access. But even with that, a part of me felt torn. I didn't know if I could ever be fully part of their world, or if I could ever reconcile the pain my father's absence caused me with the love they clearly had for me. And the truth kept weighing on me. What did this all mean for my relationship with my mom? What about the family I grew up with, the people who I had believed for so long were the only ones I could rely on? I left the house that day feeling more confused than ever. I'd learned so much. I'd found new roots. But with those roots came a deeper understanding of the rift that had always been there. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I couldn't pretend my past wasn't full of lies and half-truths. I couldn't deny the family I had here. But how could I bridge the gap between the life I had been given and the one I had just discovered? The days after meeting my biological family were a blur of confusion and mixed emotions. For the first time, I had a sense of who I really was, but it didn't come with the clarity I had hoped for. I thought meeting them would solve everything, but instead, it felt like I had opened a door to an entirely new world I wasn't sure I belonged to. I kept in touch with Anne and Patricia over the next few weeks. They were kind, supportive, and eager to include me in their lives. But every time I talked to them, I felt like I was betraying the family I had grown up with. My mom's side of the family wasn't exactly happy with me. Most of them remained silent. Some of them even started to distance themselves, not knowing how to navigate the truth I had exposed about my mother. But the most heartbreaking part was my relationship with my mom. She hadn't tried to contact me since the reunion. Not even a word. And though it stung, I felt like I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend everything was fine after everything that had come to light. I didn't even want to. I was beginning to realize something difficult. The woman who raised me was no longer someone I could love in the way I thought I had. My feelings for her were tangled in years of manipulation, guilt, and lies. And the hardest part was acknowledging that I wasn't the person I used to be either. Couldn't be. I had learned too much about who she was and who I had been raised to be. The perfect son. The obedient one. The one who accepted her version of the world without question. But what about now? What did it mean to be me? The week after meeting my biological family, I sat down with my father's lawyer again. The final letter from my father was still in my hands, and there were a few things I still didn't understand. "Your father's confession wasn't just about the inheritance," the lawyer said. He left you something more important. He left you the opportunity to find the truth and to decide who you want to be. What do you mean? There's a final letter. One he asked me to give you should the time come. It's for you to read when you're ready. I took the envelope he handed me. It was thick, sealed, and my hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with my father's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you've learned the truth. About your mother. About me. About everything. But I need you to know something. I'm proud of you. I always will be. I know that I wasn't there when you needed me. I wasn't perfect. But I hope you find the strength to live your life on your terms. Don't let anyone's lies define you. Not mine. Not your mother's. Find your own path. And know that whatever you choose, I will always love you. This is your life. Live it freely. With no regret. I sat there for a long time, holding the letter in my hands, and feeling an overwhelming mix of grief and relief. The grief came from knowing that I would never have the chance to know the man who had written this letter. The man who had tried so hard, despite everything, to protect me from the truth. The relief came from knowing that he didn't blame me for any of it. He wasn't angry. He didn't want me to carry the weight of his mistakes or my mother's. He wanted me to be free. And as I read those final words, I felt a shift inside me. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of losing my family. I wasn't afraid of what they might say or do. I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a clear path forward. But it was my path. One that I would walk with my head held high. I picked up the phone and made the hardest call of all. I called my mom. I didn't know what I would say, but I needed to say something. She answered. Her voice was hoarse. "What do you want?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "I want to tell you something, but you have to listen. I'm not the person you raised anymore. I'm not the person you tried to make me, and I can't pretend I am." There was silence on the other end. "I know you're angry," I continued, "but I need you to understand. You're not the only one who has the right to a story. I have mine too. I never wanted you to be a part of this," she snapped. "I did everything for you, and now you're throwing it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away," I said, my voice firm. "I'm just choosing to be myself." Finally, she hung up. I didn't expect anything else. But it was over. And as hard as it was, I finally felt like I was standing on solid ground. The days following my call to my mom were a blur. She didn't try to reach out again. I thought that, after everything, I'd feel a sense of peace. That the hardest part was behind me. But I was wrong. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, I received another message. This time it wasn't from a family member, it was from my biological family. It read, "We need to meet again. There's something we need to tell you. It's about your mother." I hesitated for a moment. My heart was heavy, unsure whether I wanted to dig up any more secrets. But then I realized I had to know. I arranged to meet them the next day. When I walked into their home, Anne and Patricia were waiting for me. Their faces were more somber than usual. The atmosphere felt heavy, the calm before a storm, and spoke first. "Kyle, I know this isn't easy, but we need you to know something important. Something about your mother, and something about your father." "What is it?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "We didn't just reach out to you because we wanted to reconnect," Patricia said softly. "There's something you need to understand. About why your father and your mother never stayed in touch." I felt a chill run through me. There was more that I wasn't ready for, but I was already here. I couldn't walk away now, and continued. "Your father wasn't just running from your mother. There were things he did to protect you, but he wasn't the only one with a secret." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Patricia took a deep breath. "Your mother was never just a victim in all of this. She had connections, people she didn't tell anyone about, people who worked for her, and she used them, used her charm and power to manipulate everyone around her." My mind was spinning. I thought I knew the story. I thought I had it all figured out. But this This was something I couldn't have predicted. What kind of people? I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer, and shook her head. People who worked in the shadows. Powerful people. And your father, he knew it. He knew your mother was involved in things she shouldn't have been. And he made sure to take you out of it. I felt like I was suffocating. This was more than I had ever anticipated. My father had tried to protect me from something darker than I could have imagined. And my mother? She had built her life on lies and deceit. Patricia looked at me with pity. We tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen. And he didn't want you to ever know what she was involved in. That's why he pulled away from us. That's why he couldn't be part of your life the way he should have been. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My father wasn't just protecting me from my mother. He was protecting me from a world I had no idea existed. The more I processed, the more it made sense. My father's disappearance. His silence. He hadn't abandoned me. He had been keeping me safe. But from what? From who? I looked at Anne and Patricia. What happened to her? Where is she now? Patricia sighed. We don't know. After your father's death, she disappeared. Completely. She didn't leave a trace. And honestly, we think it's for the best. For all of us. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I had spent my whole life hating her, blaming her. But now I realized how little I actually knew about her. About the darkness she was wrapped up in. I stood up, my mind racing with the implications of everything I had just learned. I need time to think, I said. This is too much. I left their house, my feet heavy as I walked to my car. I felt like I was on the edge of something I couldn't control. The truth was unraveling, and I wasn't sure if I could hold on to the pieces any longer. As I sat in my car, I thought back to everything. My father's letters, the time with my mother, the family reunion, the truth about my biological family. All of it. The lies, the revelations, the love and the betrayal. But what did it all mean? Could I forgive her? Could I forgive my mother, the woman who had manipulated and controlled everything I knew? Could I forgive my father for keeping me in the dark? For hiding so much of the truth? I didn't know. I wasn't ready to decide. But one thing was certain. I couldn't keep running from the truth anymore. And I couldn't let fear or guilt control me any longer. I had to find a way forward. And I had to do it alone. I spent days turning over everything I had learned in my mind. The truth felt like a storm inside me, raging and chaotic. My father, my mother, my biological family, they all had secrets. Things they had kept hidden from me, things they had tried to protect me from, and things that changed everything. I felt lost, like I was trying to find myself in a world that had been built on lies. Could I forgive my mom for what she did? Could I forgive my dad for not telling me the truth? For keeping me in the dark for so long? Every time I tried to make sense of it, I found myself stuck. There were too many conflicting emotions. Love, anger, betrayal, confusion. The hardest part was accepting that forgiveness didn't always mean things would go back to the way they were. It didn't mean forgetting the past. And sometimes it didn't mean reconciling with the people who had hurt you. I knew that, deep down, I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't pretend I hadn't learned what I had. I couldn't forget the years of manipulation and lies. But at the same time, I didn't want to carry around hatred. I didn't want to be weighed down by the pain anymore. I had to make a decision. I had to let go. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive. But I knew I had to move forward. I had to stop letting my past control me. I had to stop letting the ghosts of my parents and their mistakes shape who I was. I took a deep breath and sent a message to my biological family. I need to talk to you. I've made my decision. They called me immediately. Anne's voice was softer than usual when she answered. What's going on, Kyle? Are you okay? I'm okay, but I've made a decision about all of this. What do you mean? I don't want to dwell on the past anymore. I've learned the truth. I've seen the ugly side of my mother and the truth about my father. But I can't keep living in that place. I'm done carrying their mistakes. There was a silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Patricia in the background, whispering something to Anne. We understand, Anne said finally. We're proud of you for making this decision. We're here for you, whatever you need. Thank you, I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The call ended, and I sat there for a moment, letting the quiet settle over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life. I had made my peace with the truth, even if it was painful. I had chosen to let go of the anger and resentment that had kept me tied to the past. But that didn't mean I was done. Not yet. The next step was to face my mother. I had been avoiding her for weeks, but I knew it was time. I couldn't hide from her forever. I had to face her and make one final decision. Whether to forgive her. I called her. Her voice was flat, almost lifeless. "What do you want?" she asked. "I'm calling because I need to say something," I said. "What is it?" "I can't keep carrying the weight of everything you've done. I've spent so long hating you, blaming you for everything. But the truth is, I'm tired of holding on to that anger." "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I'm saying I'm letting go. I'm not going to keep carrying your mistakes, your lies. I'm not going to let you control me anymore." There was a long pause. "Are you saying you forgive me?" she whispered. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'm choosing to let go of the hatred. I'm choosing to move on. For me. You're still my son," she said, her voice suddenly soft. "I've always loved you." "I know," I said, and there was a lump in my throat. "But I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I need to move forward." "So this is it?" she asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "This is it." I ended the call and sat there, staring at my phone. My heart was racing, but for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. I had finally made a decision. I had chosen myself. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know where my relationships with my biological family or my mother would go from here. But for the first time in years, I knew that I was in control. I had made my peace, and that was all I needed. The weeks after I let go of everything felt strange. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was constantly carrying around a heavy burden. But the weirdest thing, the more I tried to move forward, the more I realized just how free I really was. It wasn't a perfect freedom. It wasn't a magical everything's okay moment where the world suddenly made sense. There were still days I woke up feeling conflicted. Days when the anger and confusion would try to creep back in. But each day, I reminded myself that I was choosing to let go. I was choosing to be in control of my life, my future. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was from my father's lawyer again. "Kyle, I think it's time we discuss something else. Your father left something behind. Something you might want to see." I had thought I was done with surprises. But this? I had to know what this was. I agreed to meet him. When I arrived, the lawyer handed me another envelope. "This is your father's final request. There's no other way to say it, but this will change things for you." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single page, covered in my father's neat handwriting. "Kyle, if you're reading this, it means you've made it this far. I'm proud of you. I know you've learned the truth, and I know you've been through a lot. But there's one last thing I need you to understand. The legacy I left behind isn't just about money or possessions. It's about you, about your future. You can choose to live in the past, or you can choose to live in the present. And that's where your real power lies. There's a trust fund waiting for you, but it's not just for you. It's for the future, for building something that's truly yours. The past is done, Kyle. It's up to you what you do with the gift I've left. But I want you to know this. You're not just my son. You're your own person, and you always have been." I sat there, staring at the letter. My father had left me a legacy, not of wealth, but of freedom. Freedom to create my own future. Freedom to step out from the shadow of the past and build something new. I thought back to everything I had learned. The lies, the pain, the revelations. But I also thought about the love I had found in unexpected places, in my biological family, in the people who truly cared for me. I had discovered that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant releasing the hold the past had on me. I didn't have to repeat the mistakes of my parents. I didn't have to live in their shadows. I could be myself. I could build the life I wanted, without fear of the past catching up with me. I stood up, looking out the window of the lawyer's office. The future was mine. I walked out of that office knowing that, for the first time, I was truly free. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. I didn't need to apologize for what I had become. I had let go of my parents' mistakes. I had let go of the guilt and the anger. And now I was ready to live my life, my way. And so I moved forward, not just with the lessons of the past, but with the strength to face whatever came next. Because I knew now that the only person who could control my future was me. And I was finally free.